There are things in life we just can't explain, and there are people who explain too much but never understood their own story. Now tell me, what would you do if you found a man in an Armani suit, filthy, reeking of booze, lying among recyclable trash, with a cut-up face and a black card in his pocket? Well, that's exactly what happened to Benedito, a can collector, father of 3. He slept in a blue tarp shack but carried more honor in his chest than many suited-up politicians. It was a hot Wednesday, with a cracked sky, when he saw that body sprawled among cardboard boxes. From afar, he looked like just another drunk, but up close— "Wait, are those Italian shoes? And that tie? Sir, are you alive?" The man moved. One eye was black and blue, his hair soaked in sweat and dried blood, but it was his first words that chilled Benedito to the bone. "Kill me, please. Just finish me off." Now listen closely. That wasn't just any homeless man. That was Claudio Nogueira, a man who had once graced magazine covers, a businessman, owner of 3 holdings, married to a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a French perfume ad, and now homeless within himself. "Sir, I may be just a recycler, but I don't kill nobody. Let's get you up." Claudio said nothing. He stared at the sky like he was attending his own funeral. Without understanding a thing, Benedito placed the man on an old cart and pushed it down the alley to where he lived. "No one will judge you here, but if you want to keep smelling like death, I won't stop you either." Sometime past midnight, Claudio woke on a thin foam mattress, smelling of soap and hope. He looked around and saw a broken radio, a wooden cross on the wall, and 3 children sleeping on the floor. That's when he muttered, "Is this heaven?" And Benedito from outside replied with irony, "No, my friend, this here is rock bottom, but at least there's life here." The millionaire didn't say a word. He just looked at his own hands, searching for a past that no longer lived in them. And you, who's hearing this tale, have you liked and subscribed yet? Because if you don't do it now, you might miss what's coming next. And what's coming, my friend, will make many people swallow their pride. They say rock bottom has a spring, but I say it has an echo, and Claudio heard that echo loud and clear. He woke up again in Benedito's shack, but this time with a conscience clearer than his soul. The sun pierced through the tarp like a lighthouse on a wrecked ship. The kids were already up. One swept the dirt floor, another brushed a legless doll's hair, and the youngest, she licked a yogurt lid like it was a royal feast. Claudio rose slowly, with the poise of a man who once had a chauffeur, but now could barely stand straight. He looked around and asked, Where am I?" "In the Republic of the Invisible," said Benedito with a smile. "No one here has a badge, but everyone's got a name." Claudio scoffed. "A name? I once had a last name on a skyscraper." But then something inside him shifted. He reached into the ripped left pocket of his jacket and pulled out a crumpled paper, stained with blood and dry tears. Benedito noticed. "What's that, boss?" Claudio hesitated. His hand trembled. "It's a letter. I wrote it before ending up in that trash." "And who was it for?" Claudio swallowed hard. "For no one. It was for myself." The silence became heavy. So heavy, it felt like the shack would collapse under the weight of the truth. Claudio unfolded the paper and began to read softly. But what he read wasn't meant to be read. It was meant to be felt. "Claudio, you lost everything. But what hurts most isn't losing the company or the mansion. It's losing who you were before you became somebody. If you're reading this, it's because you survived or because you gave up on dying." Benedito heard up to that point and got up. "You know what? Time for a bath, even if it's with a bucket." He threw a towel at Claudio and pointed to a basin with well water. "We may be poor here, but we've got more dignity than most CEOs." Claudio didn't resist. He knelt, took the water and poured it on his face, washed his beard, his eyes, his soul. "And for the first time in months," he cried. But it was the kind of crying that cleanses, not the kind that drowns. And in that exact moment, the youngest girl, the one licking yogurt, pointed at him and said, "Mister, you look like my dad." Silence. Claudio went pale, paler than a blank sheet of paper, and Benedito froze. "Your dad? What do you mean, girl?" She shrugged. "He left, but my mum said he wore nice suits and cried in secret." Claudio trembled. "What's your mum's name?" But the girl only said, "She died. I just remember her name was Clara." And there, in that tarp shack, a secret from the past surfaced, because the name Clara made Claudio's heart stop for 2 whole seconds. He froze, gaze locked, hands trembling. The name Clara echoed inside him like drums in a hollow cave. "Clara," he whispered, asking time itself for confirmation. Benedito, who had seen it all, even a man with 3 fingers living happily, didn't know where to look. "Clara what, boss? You knew her?" But Claudio didn't respond. He closed his eyes and began to shake, because that name wasn't just a memory. It was guilt. 24 years ago, before magazines showed his face or BMWs graced his garage, Claudio had a love, a pure love, beneath a bus stop canopy, with sock-brewed coffee and kisses stolen during cleaning hours. Clara was a janitor at the office where he started, and he, a cocky intern who dreamed of high positions and low memories. "She got pregnant," he muttered, choking up. Benedito stepped closer. "What are you saying?" Claudio took a deep breath. "She told me she was pregnant, and I disappeared, pretended not to hear, quit my job, moved cities. Then came the money, the fame, but I never tried to find out what happened to her." Silence settled, but it wasn't respectful silence. It was judgment. Benedito looked at him like one sees a man who eats gold, but never tasted love. "Are you telling me that little girl might be your daughter?" Claudio didn't answer, but silence did it for him. "And now?" Benedito insisted. Now I don't know. I have no right. She doesn't even know who I am." That's when the girl approached again. She looked straight into his eyes and asked, "Why are you crying, sir?" Claudio, with a cracked voice, replied, "Because maybe I left you alone in the world." The girl laughed. "But I'm never alone. Uncle Benedito takes care of me. He says God lives right here." She pointed to her chest, and that's when Benedito, eyes watery, said, "She believes more in God than in any father who disappears." The blow was direct. No anesthesia. Claudio closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "I need to find out. I have to know if she is my daughter." Benedito leaned against the wall and crossed his arms. "Careful what you dig up, boss. Sometimes what you find hurts more than what you lost." But Claudio was already decided. He would dig into the past, and for that he'd have to return to where it all began. The old building where Clara used to mop the floors, and he used to wash his conscience with excuses. The next day, Claudio woke up with a sore back and a soul on fire. He had dreamed of Clara, of her half-smile and those eyes that spoke louder than any poem. But in the dream, she was leaving, holding a baby in her arms, and he stood still, with no courage and no words. "I need to go to the building, learn the truth. If she passed away, someone must know. What was her last name?" Benedito lit the stove with a match and answered without looking. "She went by Clara Mendez." Claudio closed his eyes. "That's her. It's really her." And on that muggy morning, he left in torn flip-flops and a borrowed shirt, walking like a homeless man with a mission. The old finance building was downtown, a weathered structure with a stone facade and rust dripping from iron gates. With each step, Claudio felt his knees weaken. It was as if the stairs recognized the weight of his guilt. He entered the building like someone breaking into their own past. The doorman, a young, chubby man with suspicious eyes, looked him up and down. "Oh, whoa there. This isn't a shelter, sir. What are you looking for?" Claudio hesitated. "I worked here over 20 years ago. I wanted to know if you still keep old records. About the cleaning staff. One woman, Clara Mendez." The man raised an eyebrow. Clara? Common name. But, hold up. I think I heard my grandma mention someone. She was a cleaner, right? Yes, exactly. She disappeared suddenly. I want to know what happened to her." The man nodded. "If you're willing to dig, the dead files are in the basement, but take a flashlight. The only thing darker than the lighting down there is a guilty conscience. He descended the narrow stairs where the smell was part mold, part memory. Each drawer he opened brought back a decade, employee records, faded photos, memos, printed resumes from a dot matrix printer, until he found it, a dusty brown folder labeled Clara Mendez, cleaning dept. His hands trembled. Inside, a hiring form. A copy of her ID, 2 small photos, and a handwritten note, clearly written in anger. Terminated due to undeclared pregnancy. Left without notice. No further contact. Claudio sat on the cold cement floor. The world spun. She was alone, and I left her. But there was one more thing inside the folder, a small envelope glued to the back. Inside, a folded sheet, a letter, written by Clara. If anyone ever asks about me, tell them I left out of love for my child, and shame for loving someone who only knew how to run. It was for him, always for him, and at the bottom of the letter, in childish handwriting, Julia Mendez. Claudio's heart plummeted. Now the girl had a name, a face, a mother, a story. But that wasn't all. In the bottom corner of the page, a faded stamp read, referred to Fundación Dona Celeste, orphanage. Claudio looked at the moldy concrete ceiling and whispered, "She didn't die. She was abandoned, just like I abandoned her mother." Claudio stumbled out of the basement, not drunk but dizzy from memory. That letter hit harder than any punch. He caught a packed bus, people crammed, heat sticking, head spinning, got off near Villa Aurora, where the Fundación Dona Celeste was located. An old mansion with a dry garden, tall walls, and a faded wooden sign. Here we care for what the world threw away. Claudio swallowed hard. It felt like a divine message. He clapped at the gate. A rusty hinge creaked sadly. Out stepped a woman in a grey habit, with eyes that had seen more abandonment than most televisions. "Good morning. I'm Sister Ruth. Can I help you?" Claudio tried to keep his voice steady. I'm looking for a girl. I wanted to know if there are records. Her name is Julia Mendez. Her mother, Clara Mendez. She might have been left here 10 or 12 years ago." The nun narrowed her eyes. "Are you family?" "Not exactly, but maybe I'm more than that." She sighed deeply, turned, and disappeared for 5 minutes that felt like 5 years. She returned with a light blue folder. "Yes, we have a record. Julia arrived here at 2 years old. Left at the door. No note, only a doll, and a paper with the name Clara." Claudio breathed as if surfacing from drowning. "Is she still here?" The nun nodded. "She is, but she's in the pre-adoption process. A couple has been visiting her for weeks. She's special, very affectionate. And before you ask, she never mentioned her father." Claudio lowered his head. "She has no memory, because she never had a presence." Sister Ruth gave him that look that scrapes the pride out of you. "You can't prove anything, can you?" "No, just remorse." "Then you'll have to do more than that. You'll need to pray, fight, and if you really want to prove it, I recommend a DNA test. But before anything else, she needs to want it." Claudio nodded. "I don't want to take her away from anyone. I just want the right to ask for forgiveness." Sister Ruth took a step forward. "She's out with the group visiting a school. She'll return by day's end. Do you want to wait?" Claudio looked at the concrete bench under the dry tree and replied, "I've waited 12 years. I can wait a few more hours." And there he stayed, sitting, reflecting, as the leaves fell, like pieces of pride finally letting go. Claudio had been sitting there for hours, on that hard bench, sweating more from nerves than from heat. The gate opened slowly. 2 people entered, a man in a beige suit, accountant face, forced smile, and a woman who, the moment her eyes met Claudio's, froze. "Claudio," she said, her voice caught between shock and disappointment. It took him 3 seconds to recognize her, but when he did, his blood boiled. "Sylvia?" She stepped back. "What are you doing here?" The man beside her looked puzzled. "You two know each other?" Sylvia hesitated, then replied quickly, like trying to contain a fire. "We went to college together. He was a friend of my ex." But Claudio tasted the lie, because what Sylvia wasn't saying was that she had loved him too, not in the right way, not at the right time, but she had. "Are you adopting Julia?" he asked directly. Sylvia blinked repeatedly. The man answered, "Yes, we've been approved as pre-adoptive parents. We've been waiting months for the process." "Why?" Claudio swallowed hard. "Because maybe she's my daughter." Silence. Sylvia went pale. The man looked at her, then at Claudio, then at her again. "What do you mean, Sylvia? Did you know this?" She shook her head. "Of course not. I had no idea." But the truth was, she did. She remembered Clara. She knew about the affair between Claudio and her. She knew Clara had disappeared pregnant. And deep down, she always suspected that the girl might carry his blood. "You can't show up now, Claudio. You can't mess everything up again," she said. "Mess everything up again? Are you saying it's better she never finds out where she came from?" "Maybe yes," she snapped, "because maybe it's better for her to start a new story than inherit a broken one." The man looked at both of them. "Will someone explain what's going on, or should I Google it?" Sylvia took a deep breath. She looked Claudio in the eyes and said, "This girl might be his daughter, the daughter of a woman named Clara, who died and who he abandoned." Claudio didn't react. He accepted it, because in that moment there was no defense, only truth. That's when Sister Ruth appeared at the doorway. "Mr. Claudio, Julia's back," and everything around them stopped. Claudio stood up. His legs trembled, his heart even more. Because now he was about to see with his own eyes the girl Destiny had kept from him for 12 years. She came skipping, with a backpack and a smile that lit up the yard. She ran among the other kids like she owed nothing to the world, and maybe she didn't. But the moment she reached the gate, her smile faded. Claudio felt his heart take 3 steps back inside his chest. Julia stopped, looked at him, and asked with the innocence only children have, "Are you new here, sir?" Her voice, it was sweet, but it had a firmness he knew. It was the same tone Clara used when she asked why he was so afraid to love. He tried to smile, but his face didn't follow. "Yes, but I think I've seen you before." She laughed. "I doubt it. I've never been anywhere else." Sylvia, watching from a distance with teary eyes, stepped in. "Julia, this is Claudio. He'd wanted to meet you." The girl furrowed her brow. "Why?" The question was so raw, so direct, it gave Claudio goosebumps. He knelt, lowered himself, and spoke with trembling voice. "Because maybe I came too late." She didn't understand, but something in his expression calmed her. "Did you know my mom?" she asked. Silence. "Yes, I did." She took a deep breath. "Then tell me what she was like. No one ever talks about her. They say she was kind, but never what she liked, what she said, what she dreamed of." And that's when the man broke down. He cried openly, the kind of cry that bleeds from within. She dreamed of a world where no one would ever leave you behind. She liked strong coffee, singing quietly while doing laundry, and she said you'd grow up knowing how to love, even if your father was a coward. The girl's eyes widened. "Are you my dad?" Claudio hesitated, but Sister Ruth placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "We don't know yet, my child, but it's possible." The girl didn't cry, didn't run, didn't scream. She just said, "If you are, I just want to know why you took so long." Claudio tried to speak but had no voice left. He simply opened his arms, and in a gesture that can't be rehearsed, she walked into them. It wasn't a hug, it was a rescue. But across the yard, Sylvia was watching, and whispered to her husband, "If he's the father, we'll lose her." And that's when a new battle began. The fight between biological truth and the love built in the time of absence. The atmosphere at the foundation was tense. There were no fights, no shouting, but the silence. It hurt the ears. Sylvia stepped aside and asked to speak with Sister Ruth privately. Claudio remained on the bench with Julia. She held his hand like someone holding a balloon, afraid it might fly away, but curious to see how far it could go. "Are you going to take me away?" she asked. Claudio swallowed hard. "I don't know, my daughter. I don't want to take you from anyone. I just want to get to know you." She thought for a moment and replied, "But if you really are my dad, you have to stay, right?" He closed his eyes. "Yes." Across the fence, Sylvia pressured Sister Ruth. "You can't let this happen. That child is ours. We've had weekly visits. We're already bonded. She calls us aunt and uncle. We've planned everything. It's not fair for some man to show up and confuse her again." Sister Ruth looked calmly, but with a voice that had seen too many adoptions fail due to hurt egos. "What matters is her heart, and if this man is truly the father as it seems, we have the duty to let the truth come out." Sylvia exploded. "But what matters more, the blood that disappeared, or the love that stayed?" That was the question hanging in the air. That night, Claudio left, but not before promising to return. He left behind a stuffed bear, an old one he bought from a street vendor, but Julia loved it. "Does it have a name?" she asked. "Yes, his name is Forgiveness," she smiled. "Then I'll sleep hugging him." Claudio walked to the gate, not looking back. But just before exiting, Sister Ruth caught up to him. "If you truly want to pursue this, we'll need to do a test. DNA, official procedure, but we'll also need time. Julia is not a prize, nor a debt. She's a child who needs peace." Claudio nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes. For the first time, I won't run." And so began a new phase. Tests, paperwork, interviews with social workers. Benedito helped however he could, cheering from his tarp shack, with the faith of someone who's seen the impossible. But no one expected that the DNA result would bring a truth that changed everything, not just about Julia, but about Claudio. 2 weeks later, Claudio returned to the foundation, hands sweating, heart racing like a faulty engine. It was result day. The envelope sat on the social worker's desk, sealed, neutral, cold, like bureaucracy. To his left, Benedito. To his right, Sister Ruth. Sylvia wasn't there. She chose to wait at home with her husband. Maybe she already sensed the outcome. Maybe she just didn't want to see it. The foundation worker opened the envelope with surgical calm. Slowly, she read the first line and paused. She looked at Claudio with a mix of surprise and pity. "Mr. Claudio, the result confirms that." Claudio leaned in, anxious. She swallowed and completed, "The child is not your biological daughter." Silence. Not regular silence, but the kind that turns into wind, kills all sound, and swallows the ground beneath you. "What do you mean?" Claudio whispered. She handed him the paper. He read it, reread it, again. Incompatible. 0% match. It hit like a slap of reality. Benedito shifted uneasily beside him. "But what about Clara? The letter, the name, the timing?" Sister Ruth answered, "Clara may have left the girl with that name, but she might not have been her daughter. Or Julia may have been registered under a different name, or someone hid something along the way." Claudio stood speechless. It was like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. "So, she's not my daughter?" he repeated, trying to convince himself. "Not biologically," the worker confirmed, "but that doesn't erase the bond that already exists." He stood there, frozen, paper in hand, until Benedito leaned in and whispered, "Now I want to see. Did you come here for blood or redemption?" Claudio lifted his gaze. "I don't know, but I already love that girl, and no DNA will erase that." Sister Ruth nodded. "Then, my son, if it's love you speak of, then it's love we'll nurture." But there was still one more thing. Sister Ruth pulled an old file that had never been fully reviewed. "There's more. We found another document tied to Julia's name." Claudio took the paper. It was an old birth certificate with a correction note. At the bottom, barely legible, parentage assigned in error, record corrected at age 3, mother's identity unknown. That's when it all collapsed. Julia had never been Clara's daughter, and Clara may not have survived childbirth, or her child was adopted, and Julia simply confused in a broken system. But Claudio looked at the paper again, then up at the sky. "If she's not Clara's, not mine, then whose is she?" And deep in his soul, a voice answered, "She's yours, because the love you feel can't be mistaken. The walk back to the foundation that afternoon felt different. Claudio wasn't carrying results. He wasn't carrying justifications. He was carrying the weight of a decision and the lightness of someone who finally understood why he was there. He arrived at the yard and saw Julia sitting under the mango tree, drawing with a worn-out colored pencil on a piece of paper bag. She looked up and smiled. A smile so natural, so full, he almost forgot what he came to say. She ran to him. "You came back." He knelt and held her little hands. "I did, but I need to tell you something." She made a curious face. "Good news or bad?" He took a deep breath. "The truth, the test." It said, "I'm not your dad." The girl lowered her eyes. For a moment, the world felt too small for both of them. "So you're leaving?" she asked, her voice small. Claudio felt his heart crumble, and replied as honestly as he could, "If you want me to go, I will, but if you want me to stay, I will. Not because I'm your father by blood, but because you're my daughter by choice." She said nothing. She just hugged him. That tight, childlike hug, like someone who already understood life better than many adults. "You may not be my dad," she said, "but you're the only one I ever wished was." That's when Sister Ruth appeared. With her, the couple, Sylvia and her husband. Sylvia was clearly shaken. Her husband was more reserved but listening carefully. "Did you tell her?" Sylvia asked. "I did," Claudio answered without taking his eyes off Julia. "And even so, she chose me." Sylvia's husband stepped forward. "Truth is, we want what's best for her, but maybe what's best is you." Sylvia looked Claudio in the eyes. "She talks about you before bed. She asks for you constantly. I don't know if that's fair, but I know it's love." Sister Ruth stepped in. "We need to talk, all of us, formally, legally. If you're really giving up the adoption and Claudio is willing to petition, there is a way." Claudio stood, still holding Julia's hand. "I'm not running away. Not this time. Not from her." And for the first time, he signed a document with his full name, not as a businessman, but as a man, as someone who had chosen that loving was more important than proving. And right there, in that simple yard, the world turned just a little more beautiful, because a little girl, abandoned by many, was finally chosen by someone who had almost lost everything. 2 weeks later, the foundation authorized extended family visitation, a fancy way of saying, "You can take her home, but we're still watching." The problem was, Claudio didn't have a home, at least not one big enough to fit love. The apartment he once owned had been seized by debt. The penthouse he shared with his ex-wife belonged to the bankrupt company, and the only real roof he knew these days was Benedito's blue tarp shack. So that's where he took Julia, with her small backpack in one hand and his bursting heart in the other. Benedito welcomed them with a hug and bread with margarine. "Welcome home, my girl. We don't have a suite here, but we share love." Julia ran across the yard like she'd just inherited a castle. She found an old bucket and started drawing flowers on it with a rock. Claudio watched in silence, like someone guarding a miracle, afraid to wake up. That night, Benedito made rice, fried eggs, and sausage. He served it on 3 chipped plates over a wooden board that served as a table. First family dinner, huh? It's simple, but it's more than a lot of millionaires eat with honesty. Julia smiled, mouth smudged with yolk, and said, "This tastes like a hug." Claudio couldn't hold back the tears, not of sadness, but of gratitude. After dinner, she ran to her backpack, pulled out a crumpled sheet of paper, and drew 3 stick figures holding hands under a crooked little house with a heart on top. "It's us," she said, and taped it to the wall with worn-out tape. Claudio looked at that simple gesture like someone looking at a signed deed. "I'm going to build us a real house, Julia, but that drawing will be the official blueprint." From the corner, Benedito added, "Just don't forget, walls without affection are just concrete, and a house without a soul is just a shelter for ego." And right there, between old pots, a leaky corner, and the smell of coconut soap, a home was born. But not everything was peace. The next day, Claudio was called by the social worker. "We received an anonymous report. They say the child is living in unsanitary conditions. We'll need to make a home visit. Evaluate. If there's no improvement, custody could be reversed." Claudio went cold. Once again, the world was threatening to take away the only thing he had left, Julia. 2 days after the report, a social service van pulled up in front of the shack. Out stepped a social worker in beige, clipboard in hand, with the face of someone who measures love by square footage. Claudio greeted her with a clean shirt, combed hair, and tired eyes. "Good morning. I'm Clara Fernandez from the Child Welfare and Reintegration Department. We're here for the home inspection regarding minor Julia Mendez." "Of course, come in, but watch the step. It's still makeshift." She entered and began taking notes. The faucet wrapped in a rag, the mattress on the floor, the plastic containers without lids, the unplugged fridge, because electricity only came through a tapped wire from the alley. "Are you currently employed?" she asked, not looking up from the clipboard. "I do odd jobs, help at the scrapyard, collect recyclables, but I'm trying to reactivate my certification as a financial consultant." She noted something, then turned to Julia, who was drawing on the wall with a piece of charcoal. "Julia, do you like living here?" The girl looked up, thought for a moment, and replied with a small smile. "There's noise rats, but there's hugs every day. So yes, I like it." The woman jotted it down, expressionless, but it wasn't enough. As she left, she dropped the bomb. "Mr. Claudio, I don't want to sound harsh, but by regulation, the child needs a minimally structured environment. We'll give you 30 days. If the conditions don't improve, she'll have to return to the shelter. Good luck." Claudio closed the metal gate with his soul in pieces. That night, a storm hit. One of those that washes the world and becomes a test of endurance for those without a real roof. The tarp tore, the mattress soaked, and Julia, even trying to smile, shivered with the thin blanket. Claudio sat in the dark beside Benedito and said, "I'm going to lose her. I have nothing to offer." Benedito took a sip of lukewarm coffee and answered, "You have what no one else gave her. Presence." The next morning, Claudio did something he'd never done. He wrote a letter, not to a company, not to a judge, but to Julia. He folded the paper and placed it inside her backpack next to her sketchbook. The next day, she unknowingly took it to the foundation, and the letter fell on the floor in the reading room, where a staff member found it and read it out of curiosity. It was simple, no frills, but true. "Daughter, if one day they take you from me, know that I didn't run. Know that I fought with what I had, even without armor, without protection, without power. I didn't carry you in the womb, but God placed you in my path the moment I decided to be real. If I can't give you a house, I promise to give you a world where you never feel discarded again." The letter passed through the hands of the foundation staff, and at the end of the day, Sister Ruth called Claudio with a choked voice. "That letter was the most human report I've ever read. I can't promise anything, but people here are ready to fight for you. In fact, we have a donated plot of land sitting unused. If you can find labor, it could be your new home." Claudio dropped the phone, ran to the street and shouted, "Benedito, we're building a house, brother, even if it's with powdered milk cans and ragged faith." And there, with shovels, borrowed hammers and tears mixed with cement, they began to build, not just a house, but the life everyone said Claudio would never have again. Days of blistering sun and freezing nights followed. Hammer in hand, calluses on his soul, Benedito dug the foundation trenches like someone digging for hope. Claudio mixed cement with sand and memory. With every wall that rose, Julia taped a new drawing to it. A heart, a little house, a sunbeam with her name underneath. "This'll be my wall," she said. "Here's where my bed will go, and here, our shelf of imaginary books." Yes, imaginary books, because she didn't have any yet, but she said she'd write her own, full of stories from life. The neighbors started helping. Someone donated tiles, another 2 bags of cement. Donna Zuleide lent them a 2-burner stove. Beto from the tire shop brought a used window. It was like the world, which once spit on Claudio, was now handing him a cloth to wipe his face. And every afternoon, Julia would sit with Benedito and take note of each donation. She called it the miracle logbook of our home. One day, while Claudio was finishing the final wall, she came up and asked, "Are you going to put your name on the door?" He smiled, wiping his sweat. "Mine? Yeah, like in the movies. Will it say, Claudio and Julia's house?" He thought for a moment, looked at the sky, then at her. "We're gonna give it another name, one that tells the whole story." She furrowed her brow. "What name?" He grabbed a piece of wood and slowly carved into it with a pocket knife, letter by letter. "Casa Clara." Julia smiled softly. "Is that for my mom?" He nodded, but added, "And for the light you brought. You brought clarity to everything, my daughter. You turned the darkness of my soul into morning." That night, they hung the sign above the door, and there it was, a small house, crooked walls, dirt floors, but the soul of a palace. Claudio sat outside, looking at the starry sky, and said, "If the world asked what I built in life, I used to say, a business. Today, I say, love." But peace wouldn't last. That week he received a court summons. Sylvia, under pressure from her family and lawyers, had decided to take legal action to obtain custody of Julia. Yes, after everything, citing financial instability, lack of legal ties, and an emotionally vulnerable environment. Now Claudio would have to prove, before a judge and stamped paper, that love matters more than a last name. The day of the hearing came like a storm, cold wind, grey sky, and that heavy silence that clings to your spine. Claudio wore a simple but clean shirt, worn pants, shoes borrowed from a neighbor. Julia by his side, in the little flower dress Benedito had patched with pink thread. In the courthouse hallway, they saw Sylvia with her husband and a sleek attorney with expensive clothes and cold eyes. "This isn't personal, Claudio. It's about what's best for her." You know I love that girl," he replied. "Love isn't enough," she said. "But abandoning is," he shot back, before the court officer called their names. They entered. The judge was a greying man with a tired face and a direct gaze. He didn't seem cruel, but not patient either. The hearing began with the social worker's report. Then Sylvia's lawyer spoke. "My clients offer stability, a house, private health care and private school. Mr. Claudio, though well-intentioned, lives in a structure previously deemed unsanitary, has no fixed income and no legal connection to the child." The judge looked at Claudio. "Do you wish to say something, Mr. Claudio?" He stood. His voice trembled, but it was firm. "Your Honor, what I lack in documents, I make up for in presence. I'm not her biological father, but I was the one there when she had a fever. It was me who held her hand when the rain leaked onto her pillow. I'm the one who learned to make bread because she didn't like the bakeries." The judge interrupted. "Mr. Claudio, custody isn't based on symbolic gestures." That's when Sister Ruth asked to speak. This girl came to the foundation without a true name, without known origins, with no relatives claiming her. Claudio didn't come demanding rights. He came offering forgiveness. And of all the adults in this story, he was the only one who stayed after learning she wasn't even his daughter. The judge wrote something down, thoughtful. Then he called the girl. Julia stood up, small but with giant steps. "Do you know why you're here, Julia?" "Sort of." "Do you know what adoption is?" She nodded. "It's when someone chooses to love you, even if they don't have to." "And who do you want to live with?" She looked at Sylvia, then the judge, and finally at Claudio. "I want to stay with the one who saw me, even when I was invisible." Silence. The judge took a deep breath. Then he said, "Considering the facts presented and taking into account the child's best interest, this court provisionally grants custody to Mr. Claudio Nogueira under supervision." The room froze. Sylvia lowered her head. Her husband pursed his lips. But Claudio cried, not loudly, but with the kind of silent tear that carries an entire world inside. Julia jumped into his arms and whispered, "Now can we paint the house purple? It's my favorite color." And he replied, "From now on the whole house is yours, even the roof of dreams." The house stood, not perfect, not big, but full of warmth. Casa Clara now had painted walls, flower pots in recycled bottles, a curtain made from donated fabric, and a bookshelf filled with donated stories. Julia was attending school. She had a backpack with zippers that worked, shoes that didn't let water in, and a bed with a headboard made from leftover wood. She kept the habit of drawing, now with real pencils, and every drawing came with a phrase. The most recent one was taped right at the entrance to the house. "Being rich is not having money, it's having someone who sees you." Claudio passed by that sign every morning on his way to his new job, a position as a financial advisor at a local cooperative that gave him a second chance after seeing his story on a community blog. He now helped small business owners manage their income, but always ended every consultation the same way. The best investment is people. Everything else is just a number. Benedito was still around. He now had a small space at the back of the lot. He became Julia's official godfather and guardian of Sunday stews. And every time he sat on the little bench under the mango tree, he'd say, "I saw this family being born from garbage, and today they're richer than anyone I've ever met." The story made its way into the community, into schools, and into a corner of the internet. But Claudio never wanted fame. He just wanted something no one ever taught him to want: peace. One afternoon, as he looked at Julia asleep with her drawing notebook on her chest, he thought, "They said I lost everything, but that was the day I was found." And he was right, because sometimes it takes being thrown out into the trash to finally understand what's truly worth keeping. End.